Vitality fans come here. There was a lot of them up until Vitality lost a few matches recently, and now apparently they have much less fans, and Apex is getting all the hate. Uh, it's a little bit different this time around. There's just two of us here. I'm here with Harry, who, is the marketing major and has now created an entire rating formula to buff up, the narratives rather than trying to be statistically correct according to some
Which
growing
narratives, though?
HLTV threads that have done some great sleuthing of your LinkedIn.
Yes. So it's been a fun week. I mean, the Rating 3.0 podcast we did, I think we answered some questions, but there's always more questions. There's always more questions. And I don't know what we'll do about the more extra questions. Maybe we'll come back to it at some point. But yeah, so people have found my LinkedIn now, which is fun. I like getting views on my LinkedIn. And they found out I did a marketing degree, and apparently that's why I'm such a snake. I just find that really funny. I really enjoy that because it's like literally got the HLTV job before I finished the marketing degree as well. So it's not even props
fun
master
until
plan.
you stop getting tagged in HLTV threads and you start getting LinkedIn DMs instead.
I don't think I can get LinkedIn DMs, but don't give them ideas. We're gonna be in trouble. But yeah, but the other fun thing, so Rating 3.0, like if I design something to flip my reputation with Vitality and ZywOo fans, Rating 3.0, cook. Honestly, cook. They now defend me. It's genuinely crazy. Not to go too tangential. We have got a show to run, but yeah,
That's
the
why you
ZywOo fans
designed an
love Rating
entire
3.0.
show to glaze them, though, right? That's why
Pretty
we're now
much.
talking about Vitality, and it's just us, so there's no dissent from anyone else, and you can spend the show talking about how great they are.
Just company man doing the company line on the era team. But obviously we waited until they lost a few games to do it. It wasn't interesting
Of
until
course.
now. I've wanted to do them before. You were like, boring. Good teams are boring. So we waited until they're bad.
The thing is, you haven't really started off by glazing them, though. You always like to do a little bit of a meme slide, and as you said before the show started, you can't have the meme slide be nice. It just doesn't work.
No, you just can't be nice on the meme slide.
You're asking us to choose your fighter as to why they're going downhill a little bit.
Yes. So there's lots of logical reasons why Vitality haven't won every tournament. But at the start of the show, you got to have a bit more fun. So I think there's 4 reasons why Vitality have fallen off. And I want you to pick one at the end, okay? Number 1, Apex was the first player to not get a bald buff. They got worse after he shaved his head. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, ropz bought another Porsche. Fucking rookie mistake. Like, I'm so terminally online now, but I'm seeing so many threads about ropz being like a 6-month honeymoon player and that they should cut him. I hope you found one. Honestly, it's just come back into my mind. But so ropz, you see his Porsche. That's reason number 2. Number 3, team manager Atheren. She was there. They won 7 tournaments in a row, and then she's gone. And this picture's been on Twitter ever since. Just every time they lose a game, just bang. New team manager. That's the problem. And then reason number 4 is their new sponsor. I've seen a lot of talk about this. The horrible yellow jersey with the lovely sponsor. So these are the 4 reasons why they've been jinxed after the summer break. And now it's time. You've got to choose your fighter. What do you think?
I'm a personal believer in the Atheren curse, honestly. It was it's been the most consistent thing throughout this period. The Porsche the Porsche existed before. Getting a second Porsche, it's just it doesn't really add enough value for me, he had a Porsche before, he has a second Porsche, it doesn't change anything, Also, he was tilted enough at the first Porsche being such a conversation that I don't want to, restart the whole Porsche hate train. The bald buff is just okay. You can't have the bald buff being canceled out for the first time as one of the fighters, For me, like, not having the bald buff doesn't mean that this is what jinxed it. It just means that, maybe Apex is just unlucky. They already had the Xtaz bald buff, so it doesn't really count, It's you're kind of stacking it up here a little bit. The stake one is just I don't like the jerseys, but you know what? Like, that can't be it. That can't be the deciding factor. The Atheren one has actual, if you follow the chain of how this streak started, and you have her leaving the team and Vitality suddenly not winning trophies. There's like a 1-to-1 correlation so far. So I think that you can point to that and actually be like, okay, like there's something here. There's a reason this picture has been floating around on Twitter.
Yep. That's the kind of statistical knowledge you get in a marketing degree. So I'm glad you picked up on this. I'm glad we're in agreement. But yeah, I think these are all valid points that you're bringing up. But
so you're in agreement. You think it's the Afirin debuff?
I think it is. There's a fifth fighter, which is just France, and that summer in France is too enjoyable. And after you win 7 tournaments in a row, if I was ZywOo or Apex, I'd have had a great summer as well. And it's hard. It's hard to win. Like if you're going tournament to tournament to tournament, you can never relax. But French summer, I think some wine was drank. But yeah,
you're missing the baguettes, the Eiffel Tower, and a bottle of wine in this. Then
yes, there wasn't room, unfortunately. The meme slide was too perfect as it is, so we've got to keep it.
Well, as you said, before we talk shit a little bit with the meme slide, but before we actually dive into the players and outline what's been the year for Vitality so far, we're going to talk a little bit about how they've got to this point, because they have had a historic year. They did win 7 trophies in a row. Obviously not the best start to the second half of the year, but they still made playoffs, both events. And then here they've kind of, they're losing a little bit of steam, but it's too early to, I think, have the warning signs or the warning sirens going off. I think there's a lot of overreactions happening on Twitter, because when you look at a team who's had this kind of success for the amount of events in a row that they did in the first year, it's almost incomparable to any team in history. Even Astralis, when they had their streak, didn't win this many events in a row. It's just impossible nowadays to have this kind of level consistently, tournament to tournament to tournament. And as we get into Vitality over this year as a whole, you've kind of put together the stat sheet, and when you look at the ratings that they have, almost no team has this kind of consistency across the board. Like Apex even had such an excellent first half of the year, and you're noticing like flameZ and Apex slow down a little bit in the second half of the season, because something like that's just not sustainable. But this first half of the year that really busts some of these stats, like it really shows you just how powerful they were.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the kind of jumping off point for this is we need to kind of establish why they were so good before we can kind of talk about the last few events and whether they actually matter. And I think obviously we could start with ZywOo and just saying, who's the best player of the first 6 months. But we all know that already. So instead, I kind of want to talk about ropz, and it's kind of why I want to do a podcast in February about this team. And it's because basically it's the role sub reason. It's that if you have ropz in your team, it's like having an attacking player at right back in football or something. Like it's someone with star output in difficult positions, basically. And I think there's kind of there's a trend now with these kind of CT side players. Like I think, like at some point I wanted to speak to ropz and actually do a massive feature on this kind of trend where a few years ago, the kind of spots ropz plays now would be seen as bad roles, or kind of, where you want to hide your weaker player and have a rotator there that mops up the frag, basically. But now I think a lot of the time it's, okay, we want to leave someone on their own and be overqualified and be able to get a kill and survive or 2 kills before they die, basically. Like the star anchor meta is such a thing. And I think when ropz started taking more of the anchor roles in phase, that was when it kind of became a proper thing in my head. So I think this is why at the start of the year, when a lot of people went ropz and Sphinx, pretty similar T-side players, like Sphinx is actually pretty good, but maybe it's just a vibes thing, blah, blah, blah. But the one thing I wanted to really emphasize at the start of the year was the role sub angle, which is that ropz being a player who plays these positions means that flameZ and mezii we saw basically got lots of new positions and lots of more freedom to actually play, because you can just leave ropz on. Like I think his best maps have been Nuke and Train pretty much this year on CT side, and those spots, you just understand why. Like when you watch ropz on ramp or B on train, like it just works. And it's not every map. Like obviously there's other maps. Like there's 6 maps here. He's not amazing on all of them, but when you watch Train and Nuke, which they've been very, very good at overall, like it's just such a luxury to have. Like no one else has. There's no player like ropz in my mind, apart from maybe Bit, who is able to be this kind of overqualified star anchor. But yeah. So what did you think at the start of the year? Actually, I wanna go back.
So in a way, I think the way that you have to play a lot of these anchor rules now, you require a lot of creativity, I think, more than you used to as well, in terms of how you're playing, the way that you're using your utility, the way you're buying time. Because I used to play a lot of these anchor rules when I was actually trying to, be good at the game. Never really made it that far,
You've
But
got a HLTV page.
I do, from standing in for one round. I did the Brian route. What can I say? But like back then, you could playing a lot of the anchor roles still required a lot of individual. I wouldn't say quite creativity, but I guess you needed more game sense. Whereas now, I think you need that game sense and creativity. And ropz has always really started with coming up with new plays, working with teammates to try and create new strategies for himself, but also ways to play around smokes, different grenades that you can use that are slightly off meta or slightly new meta. And I think that really helped in a lot of these kind of positions, especially like you talked about playing Train. When that map came into the pool, you saw the kind of execs and the plays that Vitality is running from CT side to like challenge B, and teams had just started trying to get back into doing that. But the way Vitality had like 4 different looks already in some of their first games of Train to challenge brown halls and take those fights, I think a bunch of that was probably ropz's work, honestly. And I think a couple of the interviews that players even mentioned, like ropz was finding new things about that. So I think the creativity that players apply to the anchor roles is something that's really needed nowadays with how teams are approaching attacking bomb sites. And ropz really brings that in spades. So when he joined the team, I think it really revitalized that aspect of it, and it helped bring a lot of new not necessarily strat strategies, but I guess different ways that they can play rounds and different ways they can change into rounds later on in halves. And now you're seeing the effect of that over time, because you're seeing these other teams who've now made changes and tried to stack firepower, not really understanding that, maybe Harry was justified with his role cell arguments, and you can't just stick every player into the roles, because to a degree, yes, you can teach a player how to play a position, but you can't teach that creativity to everybody. And I think now you really need that more than ever.
Yeah, and I think it's just like I could glaze ropz all day, honestly, because it's just he's the perfect type of player you'd want to build a team around, because like Jane would call him like a micro specialist or something. Like there's a spot on Train that I call it ropz, at least. The heaven behind the. Okay, how do I even explain this? Like at the back of heaven where they've added the new kind of block when he just sits in the corner, like Device, where Device got the clip from.
Yeah,
right?
yep.
So like spots like that, like he was like the first to work out this is a really OP spot to play, because people's pathing means that you get the first kill pretty much for free, and I'm a really good player, so I'm going to get 2. And it's little things like that, and the pop dog pushes, and how aggressive he can be in places like Amps on Inferno, and it's all micro. Like he's someone who is so methodical and so intelligent about the game, but not in a way where it takes away resources from other people. Like in terms of his positions, but also in terms of comms. Like this is someone who you can leave alone on a site, and he might be making a play, but he'll just be like, okay, Apex, I'm doing this, and it's going to be fine because it's ropz doing it. Like you don't need to think, oh my god, this way he's pushing apps. Like I'm panicking, I'm rotating. Like that. It's not that. It's ropz doing it. It's fine. So I think this is, obviously we couldn't have predicted they were going to win this many tournaments in a row, but I thought this was like a mega upgrade, despite kind of that kind of falling off of ropz at the end of 2024 before the major. Like there was a bit of talk about, is he washed up? Blah 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 blah. I think he couldn't have done more to kind of answer those questions. Like he just fits in this team perfectly.
I think the way that they are able to play around him as well really helps that, because you really have obviously resources dedicated a little towards ZywOo, but in terms of the riflers, like a lot of that goes towards ropz, or a lot of it goes towards being able to enable plays from players like ropz, because flameZ is obviously jumping in with the Mac 10 half the rounds and creating space. So when you have the ability to design stuff around someone like ZywOo, and then save the little bit extra for ropz to make, a couple of opening plays that he wants as well. It really frees up your late round players as well, including when ropz does take a few of those early entry duels and then just tucks into a lot of these anchor spots and plays it safe, plays his late rounds really safe. You have so much versatility in your late rounds for that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's the other thing about structure, and I think the next slide helps explain my point now. It's the thing with vitality structure that people need to remember is that because ZywOo's not a true AWPer, like he's their a star aggressive rifler. Like he's the one, on Inferno, for example, like he's pretty much their banana player. Like mezii is the player, if you look at Skybox or look at my positions database or any database, like it says, mezii's the banana player. But when you watch who's taking the fights and using up the resources of the hero AKs and Apex's flashbangs, they're for ZywOo. And that means you've got a really interesting kind of conundrum when it comes to what you do with the team's actual on-paper aggressive rifler. And I think Apex has always known what he needed from an entry. And I think flameZ couldn't be a better fit on paper for an Apex team with a ZywOo star to have as your entry. Because, we talk a lot about how much openers is the best role now. And it's kind of a little bit because of Dunk, but also because of CS2 just naturally. And just you want to be an opener now, basically. If you're growing up and you want to be a star player, you want to be an aggressive rifler. And flameZ is one of these old school bomb site entry soldier types that we just don't have in the game anymore. And this chart, honestly, I was like, oh, what can I do to highlight flameZ? And I was just like, okay, I'll try the 2 entry stats and see how far in the top right he was. Like I knew he'd be far to the top right. But even if you're listening on audio, check how far away from everyone he is on deaths traded. It's like nearly 30% of his deaths are traded. And yes, that's because he's got a very good team that always, are right behind him to trade him. But it is also about his role. He's one of the only proper bomb site entries we have left. Like this isn't Xertion or Ema shifting out middle, trying to get their opening kill to buff their impact rating like that. No, this is flameZ getting sent out with a Mac 10 and doing his best. And I think in a ZywOo team, you need a player like that, probably. Like, I think if you stick Donk in this team, I don't really know how the early rounds would go. I think ZywOo would become much more of a late round player and it would be fine, but you'd have to change the structure a lot. Like, Vitality have always, in my head, worked better with a soldier entry. And I think it was, I don't know if it was your interview, but it was the dupreeh stuff back then when he was kind of adapting to this kind of soldier play style. I think it was before Paris, right? Where he was trying to play like Astralis dupreeh and Apex was like, no. Like, we need an entry, a proper 2015. He basically wants himself there. Like he wants 2015 Apex just to run out and dupreeh couldn't do it. And I think flameZ just, because when you talk about an era team, you need to have everything working. And I think flameZ fits with ZywOo so well as a kind of aggressive pairing. So what do you make of him?
Well, first of all, to be clear, when people are looking at this graph, the y-axis means that he's getting a kill without a rifle in his hand, meaning like he's getting a Mac 10 kill 32% of the time with his deaths traded approximately 30% of the time. So the positions that flameZ is being put in a lot of these rounds is literally being sent in to die with a low economy gun against often full buys. But it's the way that he does it that I think is really important to highlight, because you can look at the stat and see, you can imagine him running in with a Mac 10 and getting traded. But there's so many situations where if you're watching Vitality play, they might be in a 4v5, maybe even a 5v5, but they can isolate. They've used utility to isolate certain fights. Or, for example, they're going out mid doors on Dust 2 and they smoke CT and they know there's a player somewhere close right. And flameZ will jump out mid. They have no flashes, and flameZ will just jump out mid with a Mac 10, intentionally jumping into the air. Sometimes he might get one of those bullshit double headshots with a Mac 10 or whatever, but more often than not, he's jumping so far to the side just to let ZywOo behind him quickly trade that kill, and that's setting up ZywOo to then go and kill the other B player or for the team to split. So you're right in the sense that he's not always opening rounds in the way that most teams are now using openers. He's very traditionally the soldier who's going to sacrifice and die. But the way that Vitality play around it is really what helps that shine. So when you look at flameZ' stats at the end of the game, you'll often see he's like second last on the scoreboard, sometimes even below Apex, because he has a high number of deaths. But when you look at his rating 3.0 now, you can notice that he has traded a lot as well in a lot of those deaths, and you can see his ratings crept a little higher. And if you watch the games, you'll notice there's an actual difference in the way that he's playing these rounds versus the way that other teams are, having their opener try and get those entry kills. Like flameZ doesn't always have the entry kills. It's like ZywOo who has a ton of them sometimes. And flameZ is surprisingly low for an opener. Because just the way that Vitality are running around and trying to trade him is very different.
Yeah, I actually checked on Edge, like the full buy v full buy in the last few months. Like he's like 21% opening attempts. Like this is not the same type of player with the same type of freedom as all of basically the openers on the other teams. Like the early round is not built around flameZ because when Apex calls a mid round execute, he wants flameZ there to entry basically because he's better at doing it. He takes space in such a different way than like someone who is interested in getting the kills, like a ropz or ZywOo would take space. It's a different ballgame. It's like having 2017 MSL who can shoot back in your team. So when you need it to be like a slow default and like taking banana control,
that's like my MVP winner right there.
A really good entry. Yeah. Without the AWP though, not yet. We've not seen flameZ AWPing. Maybe that's what he needs for the MVP. But literally, it's like having the kind of hooksy MSL snappy style entry. But then when it is the 4v4 or whatever, and he's allowed to work a little bit, he's as good as the other openers as well. Like it's just such a unique tool set that Apex has kind of got out of flameZ, I think. Like, and I think you do have to give credit to Apex because there's a reason the other teams don't do this, basically. Like this is Apex's system at play, I think.
So I was gonna ask, Harry, why don't other teams do this then?
Well, I think like clear roles is something that Blade would laugh at, basically. Like I think you kind of can split people into camps, and you look at the way Na'Vi play or the way Spirit play, right? It's donk entries when it's a favorable entry and their flashbangs are really good and it's a really good execute, and they think that donk will kill people quicker. So we have donk entry. If it's a bad entry parving, like I don't know, like what flameZ does on apps on Inferno, jumping out first. You don't want donk doing that, so people have their lurkers do it. And there's also just kind of I think there is a bit of a kind of quid pro quo in teams. Like they don't want someone to have bad stats because they're always entering. Like they kind of want people to take turns and everyone be able to entry. I think it's one of the things I don't really like about 1CS. There's a bit of an aversion to specialist riflers. And I think what I was hoping was that Vitality were going to kind of lead the way and that people would understand that, okay, like it's actually really valuable to have a specialist rifler like flameZ, because I think you can make the comparison to Na'Vi last year where they had 3 riflers. You couldn't really point to roles for them. Like Bit played anchor roles, but they would call him their star rifler. And it's like, it just kind of breaks the way you think about, at least the way I think about the game. And Vitality, it's the easiest entry support lurker kind of trio I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's just so obvious. Like, it's clear responsibilities. Everyone knows what they need to be good at. And I think it pays off for them. But why do other teams not do it? I think that their best players are openers and they have to build their team differently, ultimately.
I think that's a pretty good way to outline it as well. And also, like, Vitality do very much play into the way that roles should be, I think. And I don't think a lot of other teams do. Like, you see teams like Falcon stacking firepower. You see teams switching around players and putting them into roles that they haven't played before. And there's always the argument that they can learn to play the roles, but you can't. Some of the stuff you can't naturally teach. Like, for some players, there will always be their instinct not to jump in with the Mac 10 just to die, even if that is the right play. And I'm not saying that it's that they won't do it, but sometimes it's that half-second hesitation that makes the difference, or that half-second where it's just not your natural instinct that can make the difference. And I know that Yanko's illustrated this point before where, like, sometimes 0.3 seconds or 0.5 seconds can be the difference between making the right play and making the wrong one. And I think that's really outlined in some of these moments of hesitation. But
it's like Liquid. Watch Liquid execute. And they've tried really hard to make everyone want to do it. Like, even Twist does it sometimes. NAF does it quite a lot. But it's a different thing to if they had a natural entry fragger in their team, I think.
Exactly. I think as we, have touched on flames quite a bit. You like to do at least one big stats dump per episode. I know that Steele really enjoyed getting hit with one of these last episode.
That was
Really
actually
looked
Prof's
like a
fault.
bit of a deer in the headlights. Actually, I quite enjoyed his face. Um,
Yeah.
but here you're trying to tell us why mezii was one of the big 3.0 climbers, and to be clear, it does look like a 0.01 difference between 3.0 and 2.1, but you tell me that that's not quite what we're looking at, right?
Well, I mean, literally, it is. Um, we like the data dumps. People can pause it. People can have fun with it. But basically, I think the thing with 3.0 is that even though mezii only went up 0.01, like if you look at it literally, loads of players dropped below him. So that's why it feels like mezii's doing better on 3.0 than 2.1. It's not just that one Barrage game where he won a 1v1 and ZywOo did a whole video calling us shit. It's actually that he's just very, very good at the exact type of play style that 3.0 rewards that 2.1 didn't, which is basically lots of different players can go 8 and 8.5, but when mezii goes 8 and 8.5, pretty much it's because he's either in 1v5s and, just didn't really have much chance, or he didn't have a gun because he dropped it to ZywOo, or to get to that 8 and 8, he has to kind of get a 2k hold on his sights every time they come there. Like he's that type of player. He's a proper support player. And that's why a lot of the players dropped a bit from 3.0 because they got more eco frags or they had more costly deaths, basically. But mezii, in terms of percentile, went up a lot after 3.0. And it is a bit nicer to anchors because of what I've just said. Like a lot of the anchors are like that. And I think it does a better job of kind of rewarding his climb this year, because I think the mezii that came in to replace Magisk was not good at this exact thing we're talking about now. Like if 3.0 came out then, he probably would have gone down if we could do it for CSGO matches. Because I remember thinking like this is crazy. Like that losing Magisk is going to hurt them a lot. Because mezii's the type of player. Like, he's James Milner from football. You won't know that, but other people
I
will.
won't know that.
He plays every position. He's played every position. He's IGL'd. He's been a star rifler. He's been everything. And I think at first he did suffer a bit from that kind of, like, I don't know if this is a thing in other sports, but kind of when you're too versatile, like you just can't specialize and it hurts your career. And whereas I think Apex, the perfect IGL for him to be like, okay, look, your personality is of a player who is very selfless. So I'm just going to make you a support player, and it's going to work in the long term because I'm going to be able to teach you how to do certain things and whatever I like. And I would give credit to Apex for that, because I think mezii has improved a lot over these last 2.5 years. And I don't think Vitality have their era, even with ropz coming in, unless mezii makes this improvement. And although we called ropz the anchor, if you look at their target rating, which is like the average rating of all of their positions on every map, mezii still has a lower target rating, which basically means that mezii has harder positions than ropz. And you can tell that just by watching them on Overpass, because it's ropz in toilets and mezii on Monster. So mezii's got the only bad spot on the entire map. And he's still
And to be clear,
performing.
Overpass isn't included on this or on ropz' sheet because they've only played one map.
Yes, sample size Andy. But look at the spots he plays. He plays floor on nuke. It's a horrible role. It's terrible. He's got a 1.25 rating playing floor on nuke. Like this is insane. And yes, I designed 3.0 to be nice to British players, obviously. But this is still insane. It would still be good on 2.1. It's the only spot that I can remember on CT side that's a below 1 average off the top of my head. And he's 125.
I think the other thing that was talked about a lot when mezii came into the scene was that he was a naturally slightly more aggressive player, and you had ropz coming in as a player who's able to play a lot more of those late rounds, and as you were saying earlier, that addition freed up mezii to play a little bit more of his roles and play his style a bit. And when you have a player like mezii in some of these anchor positions, and he has that freedom to sometimes make those more aggressive plays, you're also creating way more versatility on the team. Like, yes, you're saying this delta is a bit different to, players who play in his similar roles, but that's also because mezii, from watching him, he's not one of those players who like you know, if he's anchoring, let's say, Beyond Mirage, he's actually one of those players who's not getting a ton of the eco frags that are coming. He's actually the player who's like aggressing into apartments on a gun round and getting an early double and then falling off. With like a set play that Vitality are running. He's not one of those players who sits and just farms some of those kills, and I think that really makes a big difference as to why he has some of these higher ratings. And as you were saying, he gets into some of those clutches, but he's actually making those attempts, I think, a lot more often than you might see other players because Vitality aren't leaving him in those 1v5s. Often it's like a 2v3 where he's able to come in and rotate and, actually make a play to win those rounds. So, yes, you have those weird outlier, the one outlier game that everyone's, hating on. But I think when you watch mezii with the eye test, you really see that he has a lot more impact, and you can tell he has a lot more impact in those roles because he's able to be more aggressive on gun rounds, and he has the freedom, I guess, to actually be one of those players who does make some of those plays, because it's not going to be ropz more often than not. It's going to be, as we said, ZywOo. And on CT side, like he's playing the anchor roles in a way that's letting him actually disrupt teams from other positions. Like even on Nuke, he plays A floor, but usually Vitality do a lot of plays where when they're not getting where not necessarily when they're getting shot down outside, but when they're not actually going for plays outside to try and disrupt, they have a lot more lobby crunches, I think, than other teams, or they make plays into lobby a lot more than other teams as well. And you see like mezii gets a little freed up to make some of those plays around as well. So I think when you have that much versatility, you're gonna see someone like mezii shine.
Mm-hmm. And it's also it's another example of why I think the team building is so good here. So shout out to Neo if it was him, or if it was Apex, whoever. Because I think it's a great example of basically scouting for profiles, not for exact fits, basically, and for personalities as well. Because I think, like mezii's that type of player who was very good in Fnatic, and you could just, if anyone who spoke to him even once would know that like this guy could be a role player for a top team in terms of his personality. Like whether he had the ability to do it was a different question, but you knew he had that kind of hardwired into him. So I think it was just a great fit. And when people were calling us a super team, I was a bit like, well, like, can we relax a little bit? Like flameZ's a very good player. He was very high in the top 20 last year, but flameZ and mezii, like they're not, if we did a draft, a fucking all-stars draft, I don't think flameZ and mezii would be as high on people's lists at the start of the year as they are now. And I think that is basic, in my head at least, that's testament to the system and the team building and how well they fit together, rather than, if I was building a team tomorrow, mezii or flameZ being the first name on my team sheet. Like I think this is an actual example of team building gone right, which is rare, it's yes. So got to give it credit.
It makes the role so and you very happy, I'm sure.
It really does. It really, really does.
Now, people might have, seen the thumbnail of our last show with the rating 3.0 that had this glorious Photoshop of Harry, who loves ZywOo. But, with this show, we had to take it back a little bit, rein him in, and he had to lead with how ZywOo's T-sides have tanked in the second quarter of the year, or second half of the year.
Well, we could have glazed him. We could have glazed ZywOo, but unfortunately, like, there's just nothing to say. Like, I could have put all of his stats from season 1, and it's like, oh, okay, he's in the top right of every graph. Okay, whatever. Apart from, like, the ones where Donk is there, obviously, because even though Donk was playing PGLs and ZywOo was playing Melbourne finals, like, Donk's stats were sometimes better. But yeah, point is, amazing first season. And I think we've been very nice to Vitality so far. So it is time to kind of work out why we think it's not quite the same this season. And it probably would have been unfair to expect them to be the same this season, but it's still interesting that they're not. And I think this is a really good place to start, which is basically ZywOo is 1.13 on T-sides since the start of this season. And there's been economy changes in there. There's been other things, like most people are worse on T-side, but he was 140 in the first season. Like, maybe this just isn't sustainable. It's only 27 maps. But 27 maps is a lot of maps for someone as good as ZywOo to be 113. I don't know what you think.
I think the way the whole team was playing the first half of the season was just unsustainable. Like, you never see that kind of dominance. So Yes, ZywOo's been on to be fair, ZywOo's been on such a high level for so long that I think that you can imagine carrying on for longer. But it is a bit of a knock-on effect that I don't think is just ZywOo whose T sides have tanked in the second half of the year. I think overall Vitality's T sides have just tanked a little bit. They look a lot more lost. You see flameZ as well, just having like a couple of rough uh individual maps, but also just like the way that they're coordinating on T side is just way poorer than they were in the first half of the year. I think you're seeing a lot less, um, like a lot less. I don't want to say communication, but it feels like they're not on the same page.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the frustration sometimes. Like I think there was a few mic'd ups where some people were critical of Apex or whatever because he was basically getting annoyed at players messing up. And I think there was an Inferno game. I can't remember which one it was, but they were down a lot. And I think Apex literally called them out of that game. Like I think it was him pretty much every time. There was a call to save them that game. Like so I was having a bad game, everyone's having a bad game. I think he did really well. And ultimately, is it always down to Apex if players are doing things differently and kind of out of slack with with what's happening in the new season? Because it is just a very like you said. What were people doing in the summer? They were watching Vitality demos. Like I think this is what everyone was doing, right? So you don't want to be too harsh. But one thing I did find interesting was the ZywOo's opening success, right? As we can use this as a point, is it was 60% first season, which is obviously insane because he doesn't AWP that much. Like this isn't just holding angles with AWPs. This is him being aggressive and winning 60% of his duels. I don't know dogs off the top of my head, but it's lower than that, I assume. And this season, 40%.
What's like the average player's opening success? Not
I
like
mean,
a
obviously it's 50.
Like...
You got to add them all up. 50%.
Okay, all right.
Everyone wins and loses. I don't know. I mean, on T side, it's a little bit lower, I think. Like maybe 48%, but that's with everyone. And so ZywOo having 39 is a huge warning sign to me because it means either someone's messing up the flashbangs or it means ZywOo is a worse player. And I don't know what's going on there, to be honest. And I think this does speak to a bit of a individual fall off because he's still getting the same hero AKs. He's still getting a lot of the same plays. Like his attempts are pretty similar. I think they actually went up a little bit, but he's just not having the same success. So I don't know what's going on.
I think part of it is I wouldn't say that it's the flashes that are being missed. Like, yes, there's definitely been a few occasions where, you know, there's been poor coordination, but I think...
You know what I mean, though? Is it team play or is it him, is what I'm saying.
I think it is him more than the team play. That's what I'm saying, is I think, yes, like, there's a few situations where the team play has been off, and I think that does compound to, you know, make him play a little bit more poorly in certain situations, but I think a lot of the individual fall off, at least this half of the season so far, has been on him. And I think Apex even said in an interview, I think it was after Cologne, he mentioned that the practice that they had, that ZywOo was like the way teams were playing in practice was really throwing him off or something along those lines. And that made it really hard for ZywOo to get back into it. I'll look up the actual quote, but in the meantime, I also wanted to say in terms of what I was saying with their T-sides overall suffering, I think a big thing has been their Mirage drop-off on T-side has really been a big component of that, and that's really came back to bite them. And I think ZywOo going missing on those T-sides has also been really, really detrimental to them because flameZ on the CT side of Mirage, I think, suffers a lot individually, but his T-sides are decent, whereas it's been the opposite for ZywOo. So there's this disconnect where a lot of the CT sides on Mirage have been carried by ZywOo, but then the T sides aren't really having that same impact. And I think that's really started affecting them. I think it's a big component of why they've had such a rough start to the season.
And there's a lot of donk mania at the moment, obviously after Cologne and, you know, rating 3.0 coming out and donk still being way clear as eye for the year. Obviously that doesn't have all the context in it. And I think it is really interesting that he's still so good on CT side. Like this, because in my head that it does speak to something going on, really, because he's still clearly got the mechanical ability to be ZywOo we know, obviously. Like I don't want to overreact at these T sides. it's just what's actually doing it. Like his traded deaths 16% and down from 24%. He's not clutching as much. He's not AWPing as much. Um, his kills per round win are below 1, which is insane for ZywOo. Like he's normally like Donk's 1.25 all the time. ZywOo's 1.1, 1.2, pretty much. And he still is on CT side. Like it is just a case of what's changed, really. And yeah, I don't know.
So I looked up the quote, and it was after Cologne. It was obviously after ZywOo had that really bad series, and then it was the following event, and ZywOo was basically saying like he understood why he played wrong and what happened, and they had a whole team talk. But the quote is that ZywOo got a bit frustrated by CS in a way when you practice. Okay, so practice is pretty bad overall. The quality of practice is pretty bad. And that tilts me as well because you just can't train against a lot of teams. They just do things they would never do in an official. You know, it's tale as old as time.
Here we go.
They don't play together and blah, blah, blah. So it's a bit annoying for us. And I think his problem was that he was also focusing too much on his opponents and not on trying to find a solution or a way to get better in the practice and focusing too much on the others. So it made him a bit frustrated a lot in those games. It didn't help him to play more, and he was a bit more frustrated than usual playing CS, even playing FACEIT or that kind of stuff. So for him, it was more about not enjoying it that much. So, and then he said that the practice after Bounty went well. So I think a component of that is also that if ZywOo is getting frustrated in practice by the way a lot of teams were playing, I think that does change, the way. If he's not playing the way he usually does because he's in his own head or he's, getting annoyed by the way other teams are playing, that's definitely going to affect the way that the team is able to play overall.
But it's the Astralis thing, right? Like you've won 7 or 8 tournaments in a row, and I go into summer and I say, okay, it's not whatever we're doing is not working. So what do you do? Number one, when you practice Vitality, ruin their practice. Actively ruin their practice. Number two, watch all their demos, understand what makes them work, what they expect. Are they expecting you to be logical? If they're expecting you to be logical, don't be logical. If Astralis are gonna, Prime Astralis would know what you wanted to do. So what did teams start doing? They started doing the wrong thing, and it worked better. Like
exactly,
because you only need to win these one-off games, as Mongols are proving. Like it's because it's been semi-finals. You don't have to do it for a full best of 5. You just need to turn up on that day and win 2 maps. And Vitality of, they're obviously very, very good, but they can get upset by things like this. And I think hearing that about ZywOo doesn't really surprise me because it's exactly what I'd be telling teams to do. Like, practice what you think will work against Vitality against MOUZ or something, like against some budget version of Vitality. Don't do it against them. Ruin their practice. Why wouldn't you ruin their practice? Tell me.
It's not even the concept of ruining their practice necessarily, though. It's the fact that it's exactly what you said, in that you can't play the way Vitality, like you can't play into Vitality. And it's the same thing as when Astralis is playing. Like you had the teams who were beating them were the ones who actually were not trying to play their style. That was a big thing that Kerrigan said back then on FaZe was, if you're trying to play the Astralis style against Astralis, they're just going to beat you. You have to actually, play off meta. You have to play in ways that aren't going to be expected by them. And it might not be the highest winning percentage play that you typically make, but if you're making that play, Vitality are clearly going to be 3 steps ahead of you already. So sometimes you do need to make those plays. And I think that's a big component by why the Mongols is beating them, because Mongols, they win with individual skill a lot as well. And you'll see a lot of teams talk about how they're one of the most sharp aiming teams in the world. And I think that really lets them get away with making plays that aren't the highest win percentage, but can still get you the win because your players are able to out aim players in a certain situation. But that also is kind of why the Mongols have been inconsistent. I think that it plays hand in hand, and that you don't always get away with that kind of thing. But sometimes when you have a team that's so dominant because of playing really well, and you start countering them by playing in a way that's not actually predictable, but not the highest win percentage, sometimes that is the solution you need.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly like I was kind of surprised MOUZ were the first to break the streak, because in my head I thought it was going to be a team like Mongols or or Spirit, or even like a Falcons team with just stupid firepower turning up on the day and being warmer and more ready for it. Because I do think that kind of techno performance, like it's just, I know his role changed a little bit, and I know he's entering a bit less, but is that going to happen again? Are we honestly going to think that's going to happen again? Like in his server with ZywOo and ropz in it? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm convinced. And I think this is a really important period for Vitality to basically keep their heads. Because Apex is that type of in-game leader where I would love to play for him when we're good, and I'd hate to play for him when we're bad. Because he's just telling you how shit you are, and you know how shit you are, and you know you've messed up, but he needs you to know that he knows you messed up as well, right? Like it's that type of leadership style, and I think it works really well. There's lots of obviously famous sports coaches who use that kind of leadership style. I think it can lead to really good cycles, like the first half of this year, because when it's good, he's basically keeping very good players grounded and keeping them level-headed, and he also knows what the right thing to do is, and that works when you're winning. But when you're losing, like, I'd hate it. I'd just shut down. I'd go full Elise on this guy. Like, I just wouldn't. I don't know what I'd do, and that's why I'm not there, obviously. But I do think
that's
this
why
is
you're not there. Exactly.
But
Nothing in game based.
Well, I never tried, unlike you. So you kind of, who knows what would have happened if I'd have joined a team. But yeah, but what I'm saying is basically, it's really important that they keep their heads and don't think that because they've lost 3 semi-finals that they're not the best team in the world anymore. Like I can see why people externally might want to point to Spirit or whatever, but in my head, if I was trying to speak to this team, I'd be like, no, you are still structurally the best team in the world. You still have at least a top 2 player in the world, and you still have amazing role players that fit really well together. And I think Apex has been the best caller by far. Like, a lot of the legacy in leaders have had bad years. Like,
easily,
Alexi's had a bad year, Carrigan's had a bad year, but Apex has really stepped up. So if they just keep their heads and keep playing the way they're playing, I don't think they should change too much. So this year, big events. I don't think there's a filter on it. Just T-side win rate. And Spirit have 56.3% because Donk kills people when he has a 1.5 rating. And then Vitality have a 56.6% because Apex is really good at calling, and ZywOo has a 1.5 rating and kills lots of people until the last few months. So this is what I'm saying. I think panic is the wrong approach at this moment in time.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that a 36.3% 4v5 win rate is absolutely insane when you don't have someone like Donk who's often getting sent in to get kills, because like Spirit also have a 36% win rate, but then you have, they might sacrifice like a chopper to get Donk to get the next 2. So that is like a little bit traded off, whereas Vitality, yes, they're sending in flames, but then ZywOo, isn't always the player who's getting 2. It is a little bit more by committee in those situations, whereas ZywOo is coming in the late round and getting the last 2 kills or whatever. But this stat sheet just shows you how dominant they've been on T-side, which is, I think, to your point, this half the season where they've lost some of that, it shows you that, like, it isn't that Vitality are suddenly shit now. It's just that a lot of teams are struggling on T-side, and it's one thing that they really have to solve to get back to that kind of dominance. It's not they're suddenly, no longer the best team in the world.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing I want to highlight from this is basically that I think this proves my point further, that they're not a super team and that they're basically just a happy marriage of lots of things going right at the same time. Because look at their flash assists. They've got like an extra third of flash assists compared to a team like Spirit. Like, it's the opening kill win percentage, because they're sending flameZ out and they're sending Apex out to make space and excel in those 4v5s, basically, because their best players, ropz and ZywOo, were late round players. They don't win as many opening duels as Spirit. Like, they still win a lot because they're winning a lot of rounds here. Like, they're winning a lot of games. But they're not an opening kill or multi-kill crazy team. It's the trading. It's the 25% trading, which is the best of anyone. It's the flash assist, which is, apart from Furia, the best of anyone. Like, that's the type of thing that makes them be able to win 7 tournaments in a row in an era where everyone thought that was impossible. It's not just having really good players. Everyone has really good players. It has to be more than that. And they have to keep that going as we enter kind of Budapest warm-up season.
And keep in mind, their sample size is also much higher than almost every other team on this list.
Hmm.
I'll be the sample size Andy for Harry in this case, and just say that the fact that they've done those numbers that consistently over, you know, 30 to 40 maps more than other teams on this list is crazy.
Yeah, and I let me find this stat real quick because I'm doing another article on arena rating now. 3.0 is out, and I wanted to kind of look at IGLs.
I've seen a peek at this, and let's just
You see
say
the peak of this.
Harry is
Up to
he's
it
gonna
again.
be he's up to it again, but he's also gonna be that thumbnail from 3.0 was right. Let's just say.
Yes, but basically the reason I'm bringing it up is because Apex was by far the best in
Mm-hmm.
grand finals. Not grand finals, in arena matches. And I know, like round win percentage is weird because if you have good players, you win more games, blah 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 blah. Like they've won 7 arena events like this year. Obviously they're going to be high, but I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the T sides where they kind of are consistently better than other people. I think
When you say
when
Apex is the best, you mean T side win rate in arena
T
games?
side win rate of
Yeah.
round win percentage of in game leaders, Apex is the best by far in arena matches. Um, and I just don't think it's a coincidence. Like I didn't think I'd come here and praise Apex all day, but I think he has to get more credit than I think people are giving him because I think people are doing the ZywOo thing again. When you have Donk and 2024 Manassi, you can see that they don't win 7 tournaments in a row. I think it has to be down to system and team building ultimately.
I think one of the last things we wanted to touch on was this, conversation of an era. And it's interesting to see how suddenly people are shifting the whole conversation
Recency
just
bias in
because they've been
Counter-Strike.
eliminated from a couple of events in the playoffs, by the way, of all things. Because when you compare this Vitality era to that of Astralis, I think either people weren't around back then and have only, watched videos to catch up on the history, or maybe they just don't actually remember what happened back then accurately, but it is really not like Astralis was winning every single event back then. That's not how it was. They won a bunch of events. So they won ones that mattered. They won a couple of Blast Pro Series, obviously, as they were wont to
Mm.
do. But it's not like they won every event they went to. Like they had that Cologne semifinal exit. They had the second place in Stockholm. They were not the team that won every event they attended, and Vitality won 7 straight at the start of the year. To then follow that with, a couple of semifinal exits and a 4th place at Esports World Cup, that is not the end of the world. That does not mean their era is over. That does not mean that you can suddenly think that, it wasn't an era after all, because I've seen people saying some wild things, whether that's on Twitter or HLTV forums, because let's be honest, one of those tends to be a little bit crazier than the other.
Yeah,
Uh,
Reddit's terrible, am I right?
exactly. And, you know, the thing is, when you take this graph and let's say you now add a second place finish, and then you add another first place finish and another first place finish, if you're going to look at the couple of events after the tournament break, when you look back in history, and you're not going to then say, like, oh, this is where their era ended, and then these events were just extra. It's just not how you contextualize it. Like, their era will carry on if they continue winning tournaments. It's not suddenly that you can write it off or say that, they're no longer this dominant force that they were.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's 2 things going on with the era conversation. It's that number one, people, because they won 7 tournaments in a row, and even Astralis didn't do that, then obviously everyone just jumped to, are they going to be better than Astralis? So we're kind of comparing them to literally the best team of all time that won 4 majors, which I think is a little bit unfair. I think it's more, you compare them to any of the other eras we had. Like, this is way better than what SK did. They just got kind of lucky that 2 majors were in their 3-month peak, and then they were quite good for 2 years afterwards, basically. Like, that was a summer. This is a whole season. And, I look at Blast London so far, and Spirit don't look amazing, whatever. Like, I'm hoping they meet in the final because we deserve that. To see if Vitality can actually lose a best of 5. Because if that keeps happening, then, at some point, Vitality do have to get more tournaments for us to continue this narrative. It's just that even in the games they've lost, you can see they've lost a step. But I've not seen anything that makes me think that this is it now for 2025. I just do not see that happening. And Astralis, you know, they won all those Blast Pro Series, but they could lose to North. That happened. The best team of all time could lose to North in a grand final. It could lose to Exist standing in for FaZe in a grand final. But that all happened in the era. So I think you're spot on. I think we need to be a bit kinder to Vitality at the start of this season. I know all the Donk fans are getting really excited. But we cannot overestimate how insane the first half of the year was for Vitality.
I think the other thing to outline is I have to look up who Astralis lost to in some of those events, but keep in mind the teams that Vitality have lost to in these events are not some outlier, top 10 team. It's literally Mao's and the Mongols, two of the best teams in the world. And you're not suddenly having them lose against a random lower ranked team and having that become, a warning sign. They're literally losing to only the best teams in the world. And that too, the conversation point around Mongols beating them is that, wow, a team finally beat Vitality twice this year. Just the fact that that is a conversation should already credit what they've done, but people are using that to turn it into, everything's going wrong suddenly. Whereas I think it's really become, people are too quick to dismiss what's happening, I think, and they're trying to take just what's happened in this season and isolate it really quickly. And I think we need to rein it a little bit and see how the next couple of months go. Because, if they're not winning in 2 months, then I think it's valid to start talking about this a little more. But right now, it's really not. I think it's being overjudged a little bit.
Yes, I agree. But after all that talk of reining in, I think it's time for some forum threads because that was boring. And I need to get back to how studied individuals live the world, how they see the world. That's what I need.
Well, Harry, I know that you are a big fan of them. So, usually you don't get an advanced look at the forum threads. This time you got a couple, I think, but not all of them. And I want to start off with one just because it's topical. This one says Vitality Goat Era by Don Eladio Mix with the Mexican flag who loves the Mongols, who says, they already broke Astralis and NIP's BO3 records, which thought to be impossible. They so dominance that no one's seen in modern high-skill CS. They having era during when CS skill level never been this high. Thorin confirmed same in his YouTube video, and he had data from year 2000 and knowledge of all great teams during that time, and current team Vitality is greatest of them all. Now, I want to say that this thread was posted on July 20th. Now, this same forum user had created another thread on August 24th that says Vitality change. It says minus flameZ plus donk, much better opener / entry, minus Apex, the IGL, and move him to analyst assistant. Not just analyst, analyst assistant.
Just get him on Skybox overnight.
Followed by plus Senzu / Blitz, IGL with massive firepower. I'm not sure how he's picking 2 players, but minus mezii support, plus Senzu / Techno 4K support with much more firepower, plus Monacy as backup player if ZywOo needs to be punished for playing bad from Kerrigan playbook. plus Heaton coach, he got most experience. So we have Vitality ZywOo, Vitality ropz, Vitality donk, Vitality Senzu, Vitality Techno 4K / Blitz, 6th backup for ZywOo, Monacy. What your thoughts? New GOAT team? Followed by another thread from the same user 3 days later that says Vitality retire. You finally see what I have been saying, that need to change everybody except ZywOo and ropz. 312 versus M18. And the first comment on that thread says HLTV at its best. I don't know if this person caught the fact this person made 3 threads that were completely against the spirit of what he was saying 1 month ago. But I think this is very entertaining to click on and see that it was all 3 of them were by the same person.
So I would love to engage with the first thread, but unfortunately, it's just it's more it's more fun to ignore it and just pretend that the time started July 1st, 2025, and in my memory, ZywOo's bad on T sides and Vitality suck. That's the existence we're going to live in now, because that's how forum users work. It's the 1 month sample size. You can see why for Rain 3.0 they only look at one half, because they've forgotten the first half. They need to just look at the second half. Be like, why is his cast rating so high? It's like, he played 2 rounds. Anyway, not mad about that, obviously.
I think it's just impressive how you can write that much text in a span of a month that is the reverse opinion of what you last wrote. I don't know how you go from Vitality GOAT era in 1 month to Vitality change, and you change 3 players, and you bring in mezii as a backup in case ZywOo's bad.
I enjoyed that bit though. That was really the Carrigan playbook is good. That is solid. It's literally worked as well. Like you can't even shade it.
It has. Brokey is the guy now.
Mm-hmm. Great article.
According to our new AI writer, is yes.
Yes. I mean, there is a serious point to the first forum thread. I think this forum user is clearly very, very into the game. I'm going to choose to believe he's trolling for the last 2 threads. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say I think there is there's an argument to be made about the greatest peak in CS. And obviously I wasn't there for all the ones the forum was probably talking about in that 40-minute video. But the ones I've seen, I don't know if I've seen any apart from Astralis. And I think 2018 Astralis, for me, I think it was actually ropz that made this point, ironically, which is basically if you go and watch a game from 2017, 2018, like it's not quite kind of Pele v Plumbers level in football, but it's a little bit. Like Astralis are doing things that now seem so basic. Like we're kind of all so much further along the line, and no one has matched their team play, blah, 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 blah. But they're playing against people who don't know how to react to it. So I think Vitality winning 7 tournaments in a row, like I don't think no one thought this was going to happen again. So I think I've seen worse threads, honestly.
So I started watching in the early Fnatic era, so like early 2015, and I watched the Fnatic era, I watched the SKLG era,
I
saw the Astralis, not an era, actually. Agreed. +1. People forget that they actually didn't win a ton between the 2 majors. They won a couple of titles.
They were like a week apart.
Yep. Exactly.
It's not an era.
But the other thing is, the other eras were not close to this dominant over such a concentrated period of time. Those eras were defined by the fact that teams won multiple majors, but between those events, yes, events were frequent, but it's not like those teams were winning every event that they showed up at. Like there was competition, and a lot of other teams were able to show up. Vitality went to all of these events and just like, it's not like they won every event by blowing every team out of the water. Like, yes, there was some close games against Falcons and whatnot, but like the fact that they had this streak absolutely opens a conversation for whether that is the best era of all time, even if it's a short one. Because you do have Astralises that carried on for longer, but the fact that Vitality are doing this in a time where teams are playing way more coordinated than before, there's way more research material than before. You have platforms like Skybox that filter a lot of data for you. You have other analysis tools that gather a lot of information for teams and players. You have all this anti-strats. You have so much more information that teams and players are using, and they're doing this. I think that this actually is a very valid talking point, I think.
I mean, obviously there's the NIP stuff. Like, they didn't win 87 matches in a row, obviously.
There's the NIP stuff in an era where the game was not, like, half the players hadn't moved over from 1.6. Then, you know, yes, they had a very dominant period, but at the same time, like, the game was just starting. It's not to take credit away from them, but it's not even close to how it is now.
That's the thing. Like, if Vitality had done this at the start of CS2, like, maybe we could apply the same kind of Mickey Mouse brush to it. But I just think 2 years in, like, there's nothing you can bash it with. Like, that season is the best season we're going to see. I'm convinced it is. Because even Astralis didn't do that. Like they needed the whole they had nearly as good a season twice, which maybe is better. But when you're talking about peaks, like this is insane. It's not gonna happen.
Let me bring you back to reality here, Harry, with a different forum thread.
Yeah, sorry, but we're looking.
You might know
way too
you
far
might
back.
know which one is coming. This one's by Two Scoops Too Many with an American flag. That says, sorry, a United States flag, I should say. That says Vitality plus Electronic minus Apex ? And it says now is the perfect time for Vitality to replace Apex. They got to keep the same maulding energy, but upgrades their firepower. What's not to like about this move?
The firepower bit, the molding bit, everything basically. I think Electronic would be lucky to get in BC game right now.
I'd agree with that assessment. I think I agree with this comment. A couple of comments down that says a Walnut would be a better choice of an IGL than Electronic. I don't know why they picked a Walnut specifically, but I would agree with that.
I think it might be a very rude reference to the size of his brain, but what was it? That's the Tarek meme, peanut brain. That's
peanut brain, yes.
But yeah, I mean, look, IGLing's hard. IGLing's really hard. Even Carrick is having a bad year. We shouldn't be too harsh on Electronic because Icy doesn't know how to plant a bomb. But I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's the guy for Vitality.
I think to the point that we were talking about earlier, though, is it's crazy that people. This is a second thread that we found that's calling for Apex's head. Like, you start the season with a couple of semifinal exits, and suddenly you're due to be cut as IGL, despite calling your team to 7 tournament wins in a row.
I mean, you can see why. It's the mic'd up stuff. It's the stuff where, people have read these modern leadership books, and nowhere does it say, call your teammate a putain every 5 seconds, and, like, William, why did you miss the smoke? William. Like, you're supposed to be calling the next round in freeze time. Like, you're the guy that's supposed to say, chill, guys. So you can see why people see those moments that are like, oh, it must be Apex's fault that they suck now. But it's the other way around in my head. It's they suck and Apex is mad that they suck now. Not that they, as we said all episode, not that they actually suck.
Well, Harry, let me give you a different Vitality fix, okay? By Pixel88 with the Polish flags who loves Boros. I don't know how. Good sign. I don't know how.
We found one.
Yep. And the Vitality fix is minus flames plus Zontix. No kissing is just a fucking addition. What? I don't understand the last part, to be honest.
That made less sense. The move makes less sense than the end of the forum post. Because why? Like, is this where you've just picked like the dumbest thread possible to make us feel smart that we think that maybe Zontix wouldn't be a great entry fragger for Vitality?
Sometimes I like to do that. I think the thing I'm just noticing while looking in this thread is 3 of the first 7 comments are from our friend Don Eladio Mix with the Mongolian
It's him again. You didn't even credit him.
The thread's not by him, but 3 comments in the first 7 are by him. So he's very active Vitality fan, I guess, even though he has a Mongols player.
Mm-hmm. He's the only person more active on the forums than me since Rank 3.0 dropped.
And then lastly, I'll leave you with this very beautiful post that has, I don't know, first 5 out of 7 comments that say medication or meds or some variant by McDoggy with the Polish flag that loves mezii the goat. It says, ZywOo being ZywOo. ZywOo, he is not just a man. He is a prophecy with a mouse in his hand and bullets in his veins. He bends CS reality like spaghetti. Ops snapping, rifles screaming, pistols turning into cannons, and people still there to ask who is number 1? Foolish people, foolish. The scoreboard is carved in blood, and his name is the only word written. ZywOo, ZywOo, ZywOo. Every flick is a sermon, every clutch a holy ritual, and the enemies are just sheep walking into his crosshair slaughterhouse. If 2025 has any sense, if the universe is not broken, then ZywOo will stand atop the throne of CS, glowing like a nuclear sun, laughing at the mortals who ever doubted him. Give ZywOo number one already. Has that convinced you, Harry?
I mean, where do you even honestly, that was so poetic. I'm surprised that the show's still going. I'm surprised it's still going. But yeah, it's also the thing of that now, because of Rating 3.0, I'm now the ZywOo fan. The forum has moved on. It's forgotten about 2024 finally, and now I'm a ZywOo fan because of like one EVP or something. So you reading out a thread like this has put me in a compromised position if the top
You've
20
done this yourself.
goes badly at the end of the year, because that really makes me want to put Marcy above him. That thread.
Well, here's the thing, Harry. When you
And now it's your
release your
fault.
arena rating posts, you're just gonna. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So
Yeah, that one's gonna break some hearts. But is it the Donk fans or is it the ZywOo fans? You have to tune in next time.